I started out, I wanted to earn a lot of money. I figured if I had enough money, I was going to cure all my problems. I found that that wasn't true. I earned a fair amount of problems or money, and I seemed to have more problems. But after, working at this for a few years, I decided that, the real answer is get to know yourself a little better.
Okay.
And I don't think you have to go off in the Himalayas and become a guru to.
Okay. What did you do to learn about yourself? You said you went around as many seminars.
I attended seminars.
Okay.
I went and listened to different speakers who taught something about the mind. I think the answer is in our mind if we'll start studying and trying to understand our mind.
Okay. Let me get back to you if I can. What did you learn about Bob Proctor during that study?
Well, I learned that the biggest part of me you'll never see. It's non-physical. And what you see here in the physical body is nothing but the physical manifestation of the higher side of my personality. And of course that's true with you, and Nancy's on the camera. It's true of everyone. And what we have to study, I think, is how does this non-physical part of my mind work? What happens when I think? Where do thoughts come from? How was this chair built? Somebody had to think. Thoughts are everywhere. And we pull thoughts into our mind and we build pictures or images in our mind.
Okay.
What we want to understand is that's a non-physical side of ourselves that's doing that. If I can build an image of something in my mind, I'm quite capable of building a physical replica of it in my world. So if I build an image of me as a happy, relaxed person, I can live like that. If I build an image of myself as being prosperous, I can become prosperous.
So if we think rich, we will be rich.
Absolutely. We're already rich, just short of money.
Okay, those of us that like to acquire more money
Yeah.
and or happiness or whatever we see success, those of us that want to reach the goals that we've set for ourselves, we do it first by...
Well, the first thing you do is sit down and decide what you want. If it's money you want, how much money?
Lots of money.
Well, nobody knows how much lots is.
Okay.
So you've got to be specific.
Okay.
You write down on a card exactly what you want. And you carry that card around and read it often. Now, this is what I learned in this book, Think and Grow Rich, and it's what I teach in the seminars. I'll teach people how to set goals. But you decide exactly what you want. And then you start to think. Now, you're going to have thoughts come to your mind of why you can't get it.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability in your conscious mind to reject that idea, kick it out of your mind. Thinking of why you can't do something is never going to do you any good. And keep thinking until you start to think of thoughts of how you can do it. And the way will be shown to you. It comes in the form of images in our mind. Think of how you can and not why you can't.
Okay. So our first step is to set
That's the
some
first
goals.
step.
Right? Think about how we can go about reaching those goals.
Exactly. And just think of how you can. Now, I would say before you get into that, you should get a good book and start to study it. Select a person who is already doing something that you'd like to do. Get to know that person.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the experts for advice. Don't ask the person next door, your mother, father, brother, or the guy that works beside you, because they don't necessarily know. There's no point in asking a person how to earn a lot of money if they're only earning $10,000 a year. They don't know. If they knew, they'd probably be earning a lot. It's like, don't go to a sick doctor if you want to get healthy.
Okay.
So you find someone that you can go to for advice. Get a real good book and lock into that book and start to study it. Like, I've got this one that looks like a Bible, but this is Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. I've been reading this thing now for 23 years. I'll probably read it for another 23 years. I got another good book that I brought over here today. It's called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Now, I'm not getting a commission for selling this. The author's dead now. He's been gone for a couple of years. But Dr. Joseph Murphy wrote this book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And that's probably one of the best books that you're ever going to find, because you're going to learn something about your mind when you read this book.
Okay.
Now, I read a lot of books. I've got probably 1,000 books sitting in my den at home in my library. But the one that I carry it everywhere I go, and I read it all the time, is Think and Grow Rich. I never stop reading it.
Now, where's the value for you to reread that and read
Well,
it again? I mean, you must know it well enough that...
I think I could probably recite it verbatim. But the secret is, I once read in a book where it said, when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it that you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. You see, when I read this, I create a greater awareness. Let me just read you one line out of here, 2 lines.
Okay.
Bill said the missing link in all systems of education known to civilization today may be found in the failure of educational institutions to teach students how to organize and use knowledge after they acquire it. He went on to say that we should understand the real meaning of the word educate. It's not going to a brick and mortar edifice for 25 years. That's gathering information. You'll probably develop your memory, but I would question how well you develop your mind. And I'm not against education because I encourage my children to go to school, as we know it. Now, he said the word education comes from the word educo. And he says it's derived from the Latin word educo, meaning to induce, to draw out, or to develop from within. An educated person is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated person is one who has so developed the faculties of their mind that they may acquire anything they want or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. An educated person is the one that knows how to go and get what they want out of life without being selfish. Oh.
In sense, a researcher, somebody who knows what they're looking for and knows how to go about finding.
Well, I think we should forever be involved in research because learning is a lifelong process. You never stop learning. Education means to draw out from within. We're drawing on an infinite source. We've got deep reservoirs of talent and ability within us. We can learn to do anything. We have phenomenal powers. If we used our body like we used our mind, we'd probably just move our little finger.
Okay. We don't exercise our mind enough.
No. But we're not taught to. Kids in school should be taught, before the school year ever starts, to sit down. They should be given a blank report card and get them to visualize the marks they want to get and write their own report card. This is before school starts, first week in school. And then the teacher should say, now I want you just to concentrate on how to get that mark, and I don't want you to think of why you can't. And I want you to form the attitude that you're going to get it. Now some people say that's not being realistic. That's being very realistic. That's following the success principles that go back 6,000 years in recorded history. That's how everything was accomplished.
That's not engaging in fantasy thinking, in wishful thinking, in daydreaming we talk about.
No. Well, that's where all greatness comes from. Greatness comes from fantasy. I would imagine that when Edison first saw the light bulb, he was fantasizing. But he kept fantasizing, and he built it into a theory, and then he built it into an image, and then he built it into a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, it was a fantasy to think of going to the moon. Mm-hmm. We've been up there with cars, playing golf.
Okay, you mentioned in terms of success principles, attitude, this business of attitude.
Attitude. It takes in the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act. I'd have a difficult time really explaining attitude right just in a conversation. I used a board in the seminar, and I did an attitude seminar last night. We spent 3 hours dealing with that one subject, so to do it here in 3 minutes, I can do it. I haven't learned how yet.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
I recognize it's difficult because we talk...
You have to have a winning attitude, though, Tom.
Okay. In human relations, we talk about the toughest thing with managing people. The toughest thing to deal with is their attitude. Develop a winning attitude.
Absolutely.
Can you define that for me, first of all? What is a winning attitude?
Well, if we could understand, let me digress for a second. The whole universe operates by laws, and there's a law of opposites. It's called the law of polarity. Everything has its opposite. There's a right and a left side. Mm-hmm. There's a front and a back, an up and a down, a hot and a cold, positive and negative, yin the yang. Well, you can think negative or you can think positive, but you can't think both at the same time. You're only going to think one way at one time. And we have to train our mind to think or look for the positive or the good in things. There's good in everything. There's no such thing as no good.
Car broke down on the way over to the station.
There's something good about it. There's something good about it. Now, you may have to look to find out what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's something good in everything. There has to be a positive and a negative for anything to exist. There's a law of gender that decrees that. Science understands it. It's taught in science. Well, once we understand that there's this law of opposites, there's negative thoughts or positive thoughts. As the thought energy flows into our mind, we decide what we're going to think. Person's out of work. They can decide to think I can't find a job, but they can decide to think I can. If they're thinking I'm going to find one, then they'll start attracting a train of thought to them, figuring out how to find it. You really have to understand how your conscious and your subconscious mind works in relation to your body or your physical world to understand attitude. attitude should be taught as a subject in school ahead of reading, writing, arithmetic, or anything else. Because it's a person's attitude that's going to determine the marks they get.
Okay, and maybe part of attitude or related to attitude is this business of self-image that you talked